Fiore.
Good evening, and welcome to the Red Umbrella Diaries at Joe's Pub.
And then it just comes back to here again?
Yep, that looks good.
I had this one client, Rav. He was grandfathered in from my previous pay structure. He flat out refused to see me on a weekly basis as he once had been doing.
People have always done it, and people are always going to do it. As soon as I did sex work for the first time, I was like, of course you should do this. You realize why it's the oldest profession. When I look back on my years, like working in call centers, like doing customer service phone work, that was like a shitty job. It wasn't sex work. People weren't handing me hundreds of dollars for the pleasure of eating out my pussy. Like, that wasn't happening.
I'm definitely hooked on hooking. I don't want to get a job. And I don't know that I'll ever be able to make this kind of money doing anything else again. But when you make yourself a commodity, you are a complete object. Even the nicest people who are paying you will turn not nice fast.
My mom was a stripper for close to 20 years. I have very vivid memories of being a kid and like playing dress up with her platform heels. It was something I was very familiar with, but also I never wanted to be like my mother.
The biggest downside to being a stripper is the mental work, all the rejection that you have to deal with. Dear God, as a black woman, how many times did I have to hear, wow, you're really pretty for a black girl, or I don't really like black chicks, but you're hot. I knew you weren't a regular black. Where are you from? I think there are guys that just come in here just so that they can speak really horribly to women because they can't get away with it in the real world.
From being a little older and being a little wiser and having run my own business, I had like some kind of basic business ethics. I thought of myself as like an entrepreneur or a freelancer. I remember this one guy who became one of my regulars. I showed up right on time, and he was floored because he had never had an escort that he called show up actually on time. I think things have changed a little bit, but I think there were a lot of boys trying to do a man's job.
Through sex work, I've gotten so much because now I'm not so much a sex worker as I am an advocate. Doors have opened through me now being able to speak about causes we have because there's so much violence surrounded around sex work.
I was the 23-year-old girl at the party who would casually, when people are like going around chit-chatting and being like, oh, what do you do for a living? I would be like, I'm a whore. But I would do it in this like aggressive, like, come at me, bro, kind of way. And that I wanted to challenge people on what that brought up for them. Now, one of the things that happens is, especially because I run a nonprofit that works with sex workers, the reaction I get is usually, oh, it's pity. I don't really like that pity. On the other hand, if people pity me and also will donate money to Red Umbrella Project, I'm cool with that.
The Red Umbrella Project is a community-led organization that does media, storytelling, and advocacy work with people in the sex trade.
Currently, we are at the Red Umbrella Project headquarters in downtown Brooklyn, our sweet little office space.
The deal with the Red Umbrella is that it's the symbol of the sex worker rights movement. There was a big European Congress of sex workers, and they adopted the Red Umbrella as a symbol, and it's kind of spread since then, and now it's used all over the world.
I find Red Umbrella gives me a sense of politics. It gives me a sense of wanting to know our rights and being able to go and talk to people about our rights.
People who hire us dip into the sex industry when they have spare cash and a particular fantasy that they want to engage in. This is our entire life, our entire existence. That existence, I think, does take a toll on folks. Existing in someone else's fantasy while also trying to carry on the day-to-day functions of your life is a really weird space to be in. That's the kind of thing that we connect over, and it creates this inspiration in this moment to have a lot of fun shop talk, enjoying that shared experience.
This place was made by hoes. They were like hand jobs down like right where we were sitting.
The Red Umbrella Diaries is an event that has run here at Happy Ending since 2009, and we feature true stories by people who have experiences in the sex trade.
We had the space on the first Thursday of every month. Each month we would have anywhere from 4 to 8 storytellers come and tell true stories about their lives.
So much of what clients do with hookers makes sense in their pathetic, horny brains, but falls apart under their flimsy, lusty logic in the real world. I love using writing and performance as a way to process my experiences in sex work by, taking that power back. Motherfucker, I am young. You are old, closer to death. I'm not confident about what waits for you in the afterlife.
Have I been taken in by a scheming, manipulative, morbidly obese, coked out fisting bottom?
Of course, there's a lot of sexual content in these stories. People love hearing about sex.
Get dressed, I say, as I gather up his wallet and his 3 vials of coke. We're going to the ATM.
Fucking and sucking and rimming and crazy shit. That brings levity to the space.
If you paid me a couple of $1,000s to dry hump you on a piano, God damn it, you will get freezer burn fucking with me.
It was a lot to learn about editing and what you're putting into the universe.
There's just a content about being a working woman, earning her coin, and not having to part the sea. Oh my God.
I'm so proud of what I put in the universe.
I do think there is something momentous and revelatory about stepping out in front of a crowd and turning to face them and offering them your story.
Imagine the most disgusting, repulsive person in the world. They smell, they're gross, and now you have to make them feel good about themselves. And now you have to fuck them. If you can do that, you can be an escort too.
The more that we can get our stories out there, honest stories about what it means to be a sex worker, that's the clearest path to humanizing us.
One of the most human things to do is to tell stories. It's almost like what sets us apart from animals.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second half of the Red Umbrella Diaries.
I really do believe that act of storytelling is a building block of creating a movement.
We hope that you will join us on November 14th at Joe's Pub to hear a bigger, more beautiful, more extravagant version of some of these stories.
This group is a really incredible and diverse group that represents a wide variety of experiences and identities that have to be captured to be able to even begin to tell a piece of what it means to be a sex worker.
Here, right? No, this is one and wait. Is that the Jonathan? Yes.
The first 2 stories I heard from you involved DP, fisting, cocaine for porn money, some pretty hardcore shit.
DP is not that hardcore.
What's DP?
It's all penetration.
Oh. I worked in the freaking Disney World of sex worker, okay? I was like, spoiled investment bankers, that's about it.
Most people don't become sex workers because they're slutty or oversexed or like want to have some erotic experience in the world. That's how romance novels write it. That's not reality.
What do you know about fisting a man?
I know a fisting story once.
This is so great. The mantle of fisting is laid off on us.
The mantle of fisting.
I don't have to tell fisting stories anymore.
My fisting story was fisting a guy, though. It wasn't fisting.
There's always this reoccurring story about how when there's a recession, women are going into the sex trade. That's not news, that's just reality.
All the straight boys that I play with won't let me near their booty holes with more than one finger. And my hands are small. They're so small. I mean, come on.
And when you make a duck, it's like not.
Yeah.
What's a duck?
A duck.
Because you have to tuck your finger
So wait, all three of you know exactly.
Wow.
It's important to frame sex work as a labor choice because it's a labor choice.
Stripping to porn, phone work to body work.
This is a thing that I do. It's a job. It's not a thing that I am.
Frame it in terms of work and ethics and people getting on with their lives.
The main reason that most people engage in sex work is because they need money. It is a job that people do.
Thank you, break a leg!
She just did that Cosmo thing where you go from day to night.
Even though it is often kind of a wiggly job that may not be legal or has poor or no regulation around it, it is essentially an economic activity that people engage in to support themselves.
That's not twerking, that's control.
This has to, like, I can do that, but anything in here, that can't happen. If stripping is looked at as a legitimate labor, then I can take the skills that I had to develop and use in that job and put them on a resume, say, and they translate into something else. I feel like I would kick ass as a salesperson. Stripping is a sales job. But what do I put on a resume? Meanwhile, I can show you that I can get someone to buy nothing at the rate of $500 an hour. Sometimes for several hours in a night. It's a sales skill, plain and simple. Let's get it on.
I was working out of like the suburbs of Detroit. Most of those hotels were making money because sex workers were there.
It's hellacious amounts of work. You really got to be like patient with people, and then if you're too patient, then you get eaten up by the time they demand from you. Like some people really want time, conversations, emails, and most of it is just, you know, a day's work for you.
I felt like it was esteemable work, and I learned a lot about people. It made me a more compassionate, understanding person.
Good evening and welcome to the Red Umbrella Diaries at Joe's Pub. I'm your host, Audacia Ray, and I cannot quite tell you how happy I am to welcome you all here tonight to Joe's Pub with us. Whew. Okay.
I don't really have this heroic beginnings of my activism.
Awkward transition into me telling my story.
When I moved to New York City almost 15 years ago, the folks that I met when I first moved here were in activist movements, anti-war and anti-racist activism. I did not really understand or know much about that stuff, but I wanted friends. I started hanging out and going to rallies, carrying signs and feeling awkward. Also, honestly, I was having trouble connecting with different issues that were on the table because I didn't feel a personal connection to them. Today, I feel scorn for people who don't give a damn about issues unless they impact them personally, but I was once that person.
I finished college. I had read a lot about gender studies and the sex industry, so I was a nerd with no real life experience. I was working in a job that I liked that paid me $400 a week. I thought I was a special snowflake, and I really refused to do any work that I personally saw as intellectually demeaning or work that would sap my creative energy or make me work towards someone else's vision. So I made the choice to try out the sex industry and see if I could use that as a way to bankroll my freedom and my ability to create art and live in New York without being beholden to someone else. The reality is that I could have done other work. It was not my only option. Early on, it was presented to me that my perspective was not a common one, but the more I meet sex workers over the years, the more I meet folks who did have some other opportunities that were not well paid, opportunities that to them felt soul crushing or were really hard on their intellect or their bodies or their time. So they chose sex work out of their options, and it wasn't actually a last ditch effort. So I think that experience is not uncommon.
So how do you like that height?
That's good. My blog started getting a lot of attention. It was named to, best sex bloggers of the year list. I also started professional modeling and nude modeling and doing a little bit of porn. If I had continued to try to work in museums, I would have been on a career path that was respectable.
See what happens when you guys start touching each other?
There was still no competition between having to take the bullshit of bosses and being able to work on my own, meet clients or not when I felt like it, and make the money I needed to do what I wanted to do with my life.
So this is one of my archive boxes of Spread magazine. The magazine ran from 2005 to 2010. Published 4 issues a year for those years. This is actually me on the cover of Spread magazine. I was art producing this photo shoot and the model didn't show up. I made that happen.
There was definitely a seduction of realizing that if I would be more willing to put a face to the words I was saying, I would get a lot more exposure.
Audacia, you say that your heart breaks for this young woman. Why is that?
Because I feel like she's been put in a really scary position, and she thought she was doing something that was totally private between 2 consenting adults, and now her face is all over the place and she has no control over that.
I did not make a calculated risk at the moment I chose to be a sex worker and to talk to media about it and tell personal stories about my experience. It was not planned, it was not thoughtful, it was, I want to do this right now. I did not think about myself in 5, 10, 15 years.
I am a sex worker advocate and also a former sex worker myself, and I know that this line of work can be very challenging for many people, but it's not necessarily a terrible, horrible decision for everyone.
5, 6 years ago, when I was trying desperately to exit the sex industry forever and to get a mainstream-ish job, at that moment it didn't seem worth it. Friends and family relationships, romantic relationships, immeasurable, immense loss. But at the same time, that set of circumstances and choices has created lots of possibilities for me that I might not have been brave enough to go for had my life turned out differently. The sex industry is very siloed and very isolating. And it wasn't until I started seeking out storytelling and learned that I was an activist that I started meeting people with vastly different experiences. Your experience is really different than mine. What are the common fights we have? And a lot of the time, those commonalities were we're all linked by stigma and discrimination. The story that I'm telling is a story about coming out to my family as a sex worker. I actually don't really want to tell this story, which is, I think, a big part of the reason why I should. I am anxious that my folks are going to hear the story and have feelings about it. Probably they will feel violated by me telling the story in public, but I also need to say to myself all the time that I have the right to tell the story because it is my story.
8 years ago, I came out to my parents as a sex worker. So coming out is not just a one-time thing, as those of you who've done it or been forced to do it might know. Coming out is a series of events. Since then, I have come out accidentally at the bank. I came out to my now husband when we first started dating. And I came out when I was trying to transition out of the sex industry and get a nonprofit job and explain this weird situation with my resume. But coming out is a hard thing. And 8 years ago, when I decided to do this with my family, there were a couple factors at play. One of them was that I was living this siloed existence. On one silo, I was living as Audacia Ray, the sex blogger, the activist, and also a porn performer. In this other silo, I was living as Darcy, my illegal sex working identity, and I was advertising my services on the internet that way. And I was also living as Kimberly, which is the name that my parents gave me. And in that life, I was trying to become a new museum professional and a historian. And I will tell you that these different pieces of my life, although I had originally set them up in this kind of neatly divided way, were actually killing me. I started thinking about how to heal that. I had recently become indoctrinated in sex worker rights. I had become increasingly convinced that being out and proud was the only way forward for us, that we have to step up and say, yes, I'm a sex worker, and tell our stories to the world. Also, I had recently committed to a full-page photo shoot in Time Out New York, picture of my face, my name, what I was up to. So I started thinking about these magazines just filing out into the public. And I thought, maybe this is my moment. Side note about my parents. My dad is a painter who makes erotic art. He also looks like Albert Einstein. My mom is also an artist. She's a sculptor, and she rides her bike and does yoga every day. So they were pretty good candidates for this situation. So I invited them to have lunch with me, and I chose this Ethiopian restaurant. I chose this restaurant because I had been there, I liked it, they were into interesting food, but also if we made a total scene, I didn't have to go back there ever again, and it wouldn't be a huge loss. And so I sat my parents down, and I told them I was a sex worker. And I don't really remember how the conversation went. It's because I told them that I was blogging. They asked me what name I was blogging under, and I told them Audacia Ray, which at the time was my pseudonym and has since become my legal name. So they went home and they Googled. Their family knows how to do that. And then they read everything that I had written on the internet about my sex life and doing illegal sex work. And then the phone calls started. They said truly awful things to me. My dad said, I never thought I would be ashamed of a child of mine, but I'm ashamed of you. My mom said, what will this do to your brother's career? My brother's a musician. But this was a concern. This moment has gone on for a while. It has now been 8 years. This thing is not healed. They know what I do with my life. This is my life's work. But that there are these gaps and silences in our relationship. I live now on the same block as them in Brooklyn. My friends all say that I see my parents way more than a normal person does. And I like them. Like, we hang out. We go on vacation together. We're pals. I love my family. But there is this entire thing about my life that we never, ever, ever discuss. Although 8 years ago, I was all, sex worker rights, I'm gonna change the world by coming out as a sex worker. And now I know that that's kind of naive. I also still believe it's true. And that is part of why this space exists, and I'm so glad to have all of you with us tonight. It was really amazing and still kind of felt like a dream after all these months of planning this thing. But it also still felt like the diaries.
Oh my Jesus.
Oh, stripper Jesus.
Stripper Jesus, appear to us before we go on and show us the divine light, stripper Jesus, reflected in the tassels and the sequins and the sparkly makeup.
Stripper Jesus, let our eyelashes be good to us.
Whoever made these things must have been a man too.
I met Cayenne about 3 years ago.
The bras, the corsets, all of it.
Yeah, it was definitely men that invented bras. She had been arrested for prostitution and spent some time in prison.
While in jail, I was starving. I'm usually starving every 5 minutes. I began writing down the recipes to meals. I was not crying as much, and the inmates were actually making stuff with what they had. Urban Justice Center came to visit me, and I had this rickety envelope with me. Then they said, well, you know what, we're gonna introduce you to Red Umbrella.
She had this blue spiral-bound notebook. Her grandson had this like bubbly print, and he rewrote all of her recipes.
Coming out of jail, I felt beaten by the system, and this has helped me take some of it back.
The cookbook became Cooking in Heels, which is the first publication that Red Umbrella Project put out.
I was raised by fairly successful parents that had their own views on sexuality, religion. I often joked with my brother as a child saying, I don't belong here. Why does all of this seem so wrong? If I had been raised by a family of drug addicts, I would have probably felt more loved. I used to cry after beatings. Why am I being tortured like this? You pretty much fucked me up, but I have snapback power. Good morning.
Hi.
You hungry?
Yes. You have plates set out?
I always have plates set out. Curry goat with rice and this.
I'll start with the pasta. Do you want to do a run through of your story?
Would it be okay to talk about being sexually involved in the church while all of this counseling is going on? You might as well say I was off to an early start right there. I got to experience and witness so many different parts of the cloth and ministers. Some ministers fathered half the church, but not on Sunday. Some ministers spoke just terribly about homosexuality. My opening line is going to be about oldest memories of religion and faith and, dealing with my sexuality. When you say stuff like there is no homosexuality, it is probably one of the most hateful things you could possibly say. When the church opened the doors, it's the prayer, and everybody in the church is invited to come down. And my parents felt that I needed a little extra prayer because I was having some sexuality issues. Me and my dad talk now. We hadn't had a relationship in 30-something years. I was going to talk about how, they have this technique of pushing your head down and grabbing your head and shaking it, and how I refuse to go down to that floor. Me and my mom have stopped talking. So I have a right to be nasty and mad, but I don't choose to live nasty or mad. I can only speak on it. Out in the universe, I have a father, I have sisters, I have brothers, but I don't know you, so there it is.
And then you can say something like, fast forward to my adult life.
Yeah. Early in my 20s, I was out on the block, literally. It taught me a lot about people, it taught me a lot about men, and it taught me a lot about my education, the fact that I would have to turn to sex work because my education wasn't enough. And I chose not to be homeless, and chose not to live poor, and chose to live a certain quality of life that I feel I'm entitled to. I don't give a damn what nobody else thinks. We're at the River Fund, and this is my every Saturday. When I'm all right, I'm here. And what this is like a one-stop shop for benefits, also a food bank.
We do something like 1,000 families, which is something like 3,000 or 4,000 people. And out of our entire client base, over 60% work.
But there's a normality about me being in this place and working with so many nice people. It lifts my spirits because I now have a family outside of my family. You don't always have to go to church to have faith. My church is in my heart. I could pray in Key Food. I could pray anywhere.
Hi, sweetie. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Mary Magdalene was a whore. And Mary Magdalene was judged. If you read the Bible correctly, she was forgiven for her sins.
You got the cigarette like I'm fucking Betty Davis or some shit. Fuck is that?
All right, to I-495 West.
Oh, we are so late. We're gonna be on fire.
I've probably been through a lot of rough stuff in my life. Even in school, when kids would make these horrible jokes, I would have to turn around and tell a horrible joke on them. They probably wanted to whip my butt, but after being embarrassed from laughter, I got a lot of friends because I was funny.
Most of us have seen Pretty Woman. I don't know one white girl that would go to Rodeo Drive and don't know where to buy her clothes.
Humor is a part of our medicine, our physical being.
Her second mistake was she didn't get that money when she first walked in that room.
Go hard. Hi, baby. How are you?
Hello, fabulous.
Thank you. You're fabulous. I like that.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too, sweetie. You too.
How could you be fearful when you get all those compliments?
Testify. People.
Oh, we're gonna be able to. There's no monitor.
Go up there.
And now I would like to welcome to the stage our next performer. Her name is Cayenne Dorashow, and she is very, very close to my heart. She is a force to be reckoned with, and she's wearing a lot of sequins. Please welcome Cayenne.
How the hell are y'all? One of my first lessons about church was about laying of the hands. And I learned this story because my parents thought my gender or my identity needed to be prayed on. So I went for prayer. And the minister said, you know, a couple of abusive words, homo, fag, all that kind of stuff. It didn't relate to me. I didn't understand it. So he needed to pray. And the prayer usually starts with him putting his hands on you. Well, I have to pick up my skirt for this one. So he put his hand on my head, and he pushed down. And I pushed back. And he pushed down. And I pushed back. And he pushed down even harder. And I stood my ground. Because I was not going to go down. So I had a problem with this. I had a problem with the whole process of understanding what did I do so bad? What was so wrong? And it made me feel bad. So I left that church, of course. Being raised in a spiritual family, they always wanted to keep me going to this church thing. So I went to another church where that minister decided he wanted to move me in. I went. I lived with them for 3 days. He prayed for me. I slept with his son. This same incident happened in about 5, 6, or 7 churches. Now, the fact that I'm a learned woman and I know a lot about men because of the men in church, yes, I do. But that had nothing to do with the story. When I got caught and I got outed as a sex worker, I was still in church and I went to church. And of course, you know, they have this thing with religion where you have to hang your head in shame. I was not going to do the shame game. My process of faith in my life has nothing to do with anybody else. The fact that I suck a dick for a life may just be a small part of who I am. But now today I've changed, I've learned. I'm not saying I'm doing anything different, but my process throughout life is different. I'm not just a sex worker. I'm an advocate, I'm an activist. Y'all so sweet. So I don't just live behind religion, I live in front of it. My story is to tell everyone I have faith and believe in me. I believe in you, I want you to believe in me. If we believe in ourselves and hold our head high, we can tell a story to somebody else to change somebody else's life. It was exciting. It was more nerve-wracking than Red Umbrella. And I've never talked about sex work and God all in the same plate, so to speak. This was something I needed. I didn't want to just be a sex worker. I wanted to have a voice some kind of where, someplace, and I got it.
Is there a person of color that has some foundation? Yes. I need to make a blend. Thank you.
It's a zipper?
Dominic, it's still a little pale.
Oh, so much better.
You like that better? Yeah.
It's closer to my actual tone.
Yeah.
I spent basically my 20s in the company of a British decorator of a certain renown. He was one of these society decorators. He had a lot of clients that were old money Americans and also some sort of nouveau riche strivers and some celebrities that you'd certainly know their names. Relax. I met him sort of by chance. A classmate of mine when I was in college introduced me to him, and he, took an interest in me and made this kind of proposition to me. He wanted to, spend time with me in exchange for like a weekly sum. I was studying design at the time, and I made a counter offer and said, why don't you just hire me and I'll help you in your decoration practice. We sort of started out on my terms and ended up on his. At first, I just wanted to, advance my career. He just wanted to get me drunk enough to fall into bed with him. Really an old school drunk. Half of my job was showing up to drink with him. We traveled all over Europe together. The reason he would give is that he was going to purchase antiques for his clients, which he did. He actually went to auctions in London and bought antiques and brought them over in my suitcase to avoid the customs. And then he would sell them to his clients and make a pretty decent profit. The larger reason was to travel with me in Europe and take me to these places. We went to all these fantastic palaces. We went to all these gardens. That was like an extraordinary education. Where do you experience that? When I was in my early 30s, he died of alcoholism, and he left me half of his estate. But in the past, gay men of a certain stature would sort of transmit their legacies in this way. Now I felt liberated from my alcoholic sugar daddy and was off to the races. I sort of reclaimed my sex life as my own and, really made up for some lost time in a way. But what I didn't realize was that having spent 10 years in his company, I had sort of fueled my own addictions. So within a year of getting that inheritance, I hit my own bottom in my own addiction. I sought out a recovery program, and that was 15 years ago. I have since done some very corporate work for some of the largest commercial real estate firms in New York. I think I felt like I had something to prove, like I could do that kind of work. Plus I had the wardrobe set up with custom tailored suits from my sugar daddy. And that only came to an end with the Great Recession. In all of the jobs I had, there was a little bit of sales and there was a little bit of service. There's the how I got into escorting or how I got into sex work story, which is, well, I was sitting around and somebody solicited me. And then there's also the story that a lot of us have been telling, which kind of mines the personal animus behind it, this theater of desire that just happens in space. It doesn't happen on the stage. I resist the redemption narrative. I do discuss my addiction and recovery, but there's always this thing where in order to sell a sex work story, you have to be kind of like, I did this terrible thing, And it led to this spiral of despair. And then I realized how terrible it was. And here I am, I survived that experience, and here I live to tell the tale. That's the narrative that I want to turn on its ass, because that's not the way it played out for me, and I don't think it's the way it plays out for many people. We just got steamed and worked out all kinds of stress, but I'm really glad Sailor recommended coming here before the show, because
it's a good schwitz.
Totally relaxed and clean.
Ladies and gentlemen, this next person coming to the stage, I'm his personal stalker. He is not only eye candy, he's one of the nicest, finest, kindest men I know. Here he is, Mr. Dominic.
Good evening. Long Island, 1980. Mom's driving home, groceries in the trunk. The usual battle for control of the airwaves starts. We strain our adolescent arms through the gap to reach the dial. He's always better at finding a station than me. Mom just wants us to settle. She takes control and lands on a top 40 station. But wait, they're playing something edgy. It raises my heart rate and lifts me off the back seat a little. A siren sings. Color me your color, baby. Color me your car. Little brother reacts with unmediated disgust. This is disco. He reaches for the dial. I karate whack his arm. Leave it. Maybe it's because we're riding a 78 Mercury Marquis in the metallic blue factory finish. I don't know what she means, but I know she's right. I turn myself around and position my head between the rear deck speakers as the sights roll by out the back window. Tract houses, a modernist temple, the last old farms. That was Blondie with their hit single, Call Me. Theme from American Gigolo is the subtitle, referring to a movie I'm just too young to see. This ecstasy in the back seat of that spacious and smooth-rolling vehicle revisits me over and again. The longing this song instilled in me has bent the trajectory of my existence. Not the movie, the song. At 16, I had to provide my own Paramount pictures. It's this fugue of effects, that driving beat, those seductive vocals, that suggestive subtitle, that instilled a longing in me to be the one they called, to be an American gigolo. Cut to the early noughts, a sublet in the East Village. First, my business shut down to make way for the condo boom. Then my lover kicked me out. I was emotionally unavailable. I shed that relationship weight running around Tompkins Square, working out with the local chulos. I hack my neighbor's Wi-Fi and log on to AOL chat rooms. I'm getting a fair amount of play, and it's validating. There's this one persistent guy, Horny John. I keep turning him down, mainly because he's on the Upper West Side. Too far. He finally offers me $200. I'm kind of insulted, but then the rent's due. I'm crossing a line in solitude and eerie silence, except for that AOL bloop. I'd been a kept boy in my 20s. My sugar daddy was a society decorator. I was his romantic obsession and his tormentor. But this wasn't highbrow and glamorous like having a sugar daddy. This was straight up hooking by the hour. So Horny John is a middle-aged antique stealer with a dog, a lover, and a house in New Hope. It's a chore. He's got a really hairy ass crack and clenches up at the first hint of penetration. But I persevere like a trailblazer in dense jungle. I return to the East Village with a stack of 20s and a business plan. With that pirated Wi-Fi, I log on to AOL's escort rooms. I develop a baseline persona, a dominant, verbal, bisexual Guido stud for hire. It's a fantasy I feel capable of fulfilling for an hour or two. I say yes to all the kinks and fetishes I'd only ever heard of. There's lots of on-the-job learning. Maybe it's penance for all those times I was cruel to my sugar daddy, but I find something to love in every single John. You can yay for that. It's a pure and solitary existence. Sleeping in, working out, chats, emails, writing erotic haikus, lining up appointments, conquering the night. I work this city like an outlaw mechanic. You can clap for that too. Jock straps, taxi cabs, gliding past reception at elegant hotels, being the one they call, the one they want to come, the one they want to leave. Somewhere between kept boy and Guido stud for hire, I fulfilled that longing. And that little kid in the back seat found his way. Thank you. I wrote a cheat sheet on my palm, but I didn't use it once. I think I turned that redemption narrative on its ass.
The phrase sex work has been used since about the late 1970s. Prior to that, most of the words that were about the sex industry were slang or were words that are used in a legal context. People who were doing this kind of work started to think about their work in terms of labor. It's not just indicating people who do prostitution, but also like a wide range of different jobs in the sex industry. Sex work is meant to be kind of an umbrella term for all those things.
I identify as a sex worker even though I've never blatantly sold sex. I don't subscribe to what I've called the whole hierarchy.
A lot of people do not identify with that term at all. They don't know what it is.
While strippers do not sell actual sex, we're not selling, potato chips. We are selling sexual fantasy. We're selling sexual tension. It's sex work.
A lot of people know what it is and don't want to be called it.
I don't identify as a sex worker, and I don't use the word escort ever, but some people get offended when I say hooker, but I am a hooker. It just makes me feel like an active person. Like I'm doing something, I'm like, I gotta go hook.
I relate so much with my working class identity. The idea that when I really needed to, I sold pussy for rent. I'm all about that. So that's why I love the term sex work for me. I also love hoe, hooker, whore.
Anything like that, because the oil production that I have is more than enough to keep me regenerated.
How did I begin dancing? Well, I was sexually abused and I had a drug problem and not. I went to art school.
I trick you into coming here by telling you it's a twerk class.
I studied performing and all the focus was on the craft. Keep doing the work, eventually someone will notice.
Booty twerk. Yeah. There are 3 things that we'll work on today. The first thing is the booty clap. Uh-oh. The movement actually originates from your ankles more than anything else.
They don't tell you anything about running yourself as a business once you graduate from art school. So here I am in the world with my degree, having focused on the craft. Didn't realize that you don't just go on auditions and get jobs and sustain yourself.
There's no place like home. Clicking in, out on your heels. There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
I was temping, art modeling, teaching.
I have like the best view in the room.
Hostessing at a restaurant. I was told that I wasn't outgoing enough. I was like, what do you want me to crawl into their crevices of their asshole?
Yes, twerk is work, y'all.
So I was at a crossroads where I was going to have to make the choice of give up on performing and go get a real job or find some way to make it work. My solution was to become a bartender. Went to try to get bartending jobs, could not get hired as a bartender because in New York, they want you to have 2 years of New York experience. I might be a good actor, but I'm a horrible liar, so I think they could see right through me. I tried to make my little fake resume, and I happened to walk into a club in Queens And they didn't hire me as a bartender, but they told me I could come back to be a stripper. After months of trying to get bartending jobs, trying to figure out what I would do if I did get an audition, because I couldn't afford to go into the city, I decided to try it. So I went on a snowy January evening and made myself some money. I literally stood probably about 4 feet away from a guy in a VIP room and danced for him for 2 hours. And I was like, I don't know what else to do. Like, okay, I did that move, let me turn around and do this move. And went home with all this money. And I was like, that's it? This is the really bad thing that I was so scared that I shouldn't do? Not so big a deal after all, eh? Nothing is easy, and this was the easiest hard thing. It gave me the flexibility that I needed, it gave me the money that I needed.
Figure 8 with the hips. Yes.
Working at the club was perfect. If you didn't want to work, you didn't show up. If you want to work, you show up. You want to work extra, you stay longer, you work more days. I've had people joke around with me and say, you know, well, you should put that on your resume because someone might find it intriguing or something. Yeah, not so much. It's just not looked at as a respectable thing. I have a master's degree in education. I was talking about transitioning back into academia. And everybody's kind of like, yeah, you kind of have a long, road to travel back into academia because for the last decade I've been in the world of sex work and performing. I feel like I'm smart enough, I'm capable enough, I work hard enough, I know how to show up. But what I do isn't considered legitimate. So it doesn't matter.
All right, what I want to do is...
Do you want me to time you again, or do you want to just...
No, because I'm probably gonna just go through sections.
Okay.
Writing a story about me dealing with depression was one thing. Actually having to say it out loud.
Even if I
was also dealing with a lot of depression.
I can't even wilt right now.
As a woman of color, there's still that taboo of therapy. Just pray it out, just bring it to God, or people saying, well, no, I don't believe in therapy. I'm like, it's not a religion. There's nothing for you to believe in. Like, we all have a story, and there's useful ways to process it.
How did that work?
I think that worked well.
Yeah? Mm-hmm.
On my campus. I went to NYU as a theater student. Like, oh, I want to perform at Joe's Pub one day. And now, for the third time, stripping is bringing me to Joe's Pub to perform.
I have the honor of presenting our next performer. She's just gotten back from a tour of Europe. Please put your hands together for Essence Revealed.
Because I'm at a point where I can step out of the shame that those things can bring about and speak openly about it. If I'm gonna do it, why not also do it in a place where other people may be able to find it?
I passed some dancers on my way to the dressing room. Oh great, she's here. I focus on turning me off and my stripper persona on. How much do I need to make my quota for the night? How close am I to my quota for the week? Thong, gown, heels, dress, last looks, and head out onto the floor with a huge smile. I say hello to everyone that I pass as I go to the DJ booth to pay my house fee and to check in. I don't try to get any money from them yet. I go to sit at the end of the bar and wait for my first set and watch for any good customers. All night, I'm the flirty life of the party. I dance with wild abandon, I crack naughty jokes, I smile, and at 4 a.m., I turn it all off. Wipe off my makeup, put on the baggy sweats that I came in, drive myself home, watch late night television until I fall asleep. Act acting is my day job. I'm at an audition and a bunch of blackstresses are talking about the industry. Girl, remember when we used to go out 2-3 times a day? 2-3 times a day? I'm lucky if I go out 2-3 times a week. 2-3 times a week. This is the first time in 3 weeks that I'm going out. We all and and talk about what next. Child, I had to go back to the restaurant. Lord knows I didn't want to, but I gotta pay rent. I'm silent. I look over at my roller bag, which I know has in it 7.5-inch stiletto clear heels, gowns and thongs in several colors, bags of makeup, baby wipes. I have finally escaped from the clutches of depression enough to get to work. But the week before, I'm sad. I have been spent all of my free time for the past few months alone on the brink of tears sad. On the side of a building on the standpipe, sobbing while New York gets on with its day sad. I mean, I thought I did everything right. I stayed in school, I stayed out of trouble, I got amazing grades, which led to a very overpriced education at a big name school, right in this neighborhood. I mean, I graduated cum laude, I even ate my vegetables. So why is it that I can't figure out another way to make an adult living for myself while I pursue my acting, besides stripping? I wake up on mornings and I find that depression is over me with its hands on my neck. I wish that I could just disappear so that I could be released from it. But my kind of depression isn't willful enough for me to harm myself. Dysthymia. It's just annoying and buzzing like a fly incessantly around me. I escape Vegas for 2 weeks to strip. I mean, being a stripper is normal there. But now I'm back in New York in my little bubble. And I feel like my head is gonna explode from all the horrible things that I have to say to myself. There are people living in war zones. There are children dying. Why are you always crying? Stop it. I feel like I'm gonna explode. And I go to my laptop and I research a suicide hotline. At least there'll be somebody to talk to there. I call the number and it's disconnected. Really? I mean, if I was suicidal, this will probably be the straw that broke the camel's back. I call another number. I'm put on hold. I'm put on hold to find somebody in my area. Hello? Yeah, I'm not suicidal, but I just really feel like I'm all alone in this. But yes, I know I said the word suicide, but I am not suicidal. I feel alone, like my head is gonna explode. I'm a dancer. Well, not a dancer proper, a stripper. Yes, a stripper, yes. And I don't have anyone to talk to, and are you shopping? This is the day that I check myself into the psychiatric ER. But this is also the first day on my road towards self-actualization. I could tell that there were some people that related, so there's some hoes in the house. Or sex workers, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to use that term necessarily. Oh my God, I feel so justified right now.
Yes.
Take a picture with me.
Yeah, let's do a selfie.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Yes.
Okay. And now us.
I should do it like the toddlers and tiara girls do. They put Vaseline on their teeth. Cupcake hands.
Oh, like they're holding cupcakes. Wow.
And then prissy walk. Because they don't have hips, so they have to switch.
Wait, but you moved out of your position.
I'm sorry.
There we go. Okay. This is Sailor take 2. Take 1 was an abort. And
I'd been doing a lot of prop styling, and I'd gone to Puerto Rico because I had all this work lined up for October, November, December, bedding, shoots, building sets, all kinds of things. And all of them, one by one, were canceled. It was a terrible time in the economy. Got a few bartending, catering gigs at some weddings and events. And I was like, what can I do with money? I literally was like running out of money. as a joke, a friend said something like, you should become a hooker, God knows you're a whore, or something like that. And kind of joking, and I was just like, no, it didn't even occur to me, but a couple of nights later, I was trying to figure out what I could do. I remember typing into Google, how do you become a male prostitute in New York City? And then I mulled over it for a couple of days, and then I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna get through this hurdle. The first day the ad was up, I got a call. The dude said he was a married dude from Long Island with a construction company. There's nothing wrong with two straight dudes, like, just rubbing their dicks. I'm like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. He's like, right? And I'm like, no. He's like, that's what I'm saying. And I'm like, I'm saying it too. He was not closeted, he's not gay. He just occasionally likes to be with another man and like beat off. I was like, well, that seems doable. I parked my bike in Park Slope and got in his car. He had made a request for me to bring lube, poppers, and poppers because he couldn't have those because he has a wife. And when we were finished, he said, I'm deducting the price of the hotel room. And I was like, okay. He dropped me off at my bicycle, and I've never heard from him again. So I was like, that was dreadful, but also kind of easy. And I was literally, in 1 week, back from being dead broke, as I had been for like months prior. The reason I can make a living at this is because I'm just a really regular guy. Some dude who's closeted, he's not gonna mind me showing up to his lobby. I think people are fascinated with the moment that they make a turn. Most people are like, no way am I gonna get paid for sex. Once you've gotten paid a couple times, you're like, I still wake up in the morning and brush my teeth. Some people I do think look back and think, where did I go wrong?
Because there's a before and after.
There's a before and after. Once you've done it, you would never not have done it.
Yeah. So you want to read some stories?
Yeah. Okie dokie. I have to pee. I remember those early report cards, progress reports from kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Okay, I was jealous even then of the reviews that other kids got. Mine were more like missives that were gentle reprimands of my character. Another kid might get, shares well with others. I would get daydreamer, cleans up the play area, space cadet. Knows his colors, doesn't follow instructions, and okay, that was the first paragraph, right? It's like I wrote it performative, and then I got nervous to do it performative. But now I know that when I'm starting to write something, that I'm writing the thing that I would write. I'm not even sure what I mean, but I think I know what I mean.
So what's your first line of the piece?
Sailor is a pleasure to be around. And I was thinking of just saying review. I had this idea that people wouldn't really know about the fact that, you get reviewed. Sailor has an amazing ass and lets you know just how much she enjoys you eating it.
Literature, people!
And they've all been really good, but I have had to prod for the reviews. Okay, I go from there to, yes, we get reviews, that a bad one is a kiss of death. A lot of people who read the reviews are people who will write reviews. They tend to be middle to upper class gentlemen, not of any particular color, I should say. Corporate, politics, big business, CEOs. You're reviewed on basic things, just about, your ability to show up and be clean and not smell bad. They're not like walk in the door, drop your pants, get a hard on, do it. 3 hours minimum. Dinner. They tend to want to book you for longer periods of time. They pre-book you for wherever they're coming from. It's the gigs you want. And the process of doing that was arduous for the client. When they come in, I always have this little thing, like if I'm having coffee in the morning and I see it, I know I'm getting a review. And I'll be like, I've been a good boy.
So use that.
It'll be more like an embodiment rather than like, I have this down road.
I wanted so much to have like an identity and be a job that mattered, but it didn't happen. So I'd rather not have to work for the man ever again. I once had one of those gigs where I walked into a room, there were 3 men, and when I came in, they said, just go into the room and get undressed, and they come into the room, and they were sitting on the couch, and they were just nodded for a while. They were like,
Were you just stood there?
They said, say, we'll make you a drink. I was like, do you want me to, like, you know... They're like, no, just relax.
Oh, endless weirdness.
As far as Sailor goes, Sailor can only be doing some things. Sailor is not going to do, like, the bunny hop. Sailor is fun, but regular. We'd like to say we're not this, we're not that, but we are.
You can either memorize or improvise. I opted to memorize. I've got it down. What did you do, Sailor?
What did I do?
Bullet points.
I'm trying to make it seem smaller to myself than it's not, you know, a big deal.
I'm gonna think of it as family night.
Yeah, like recital, like high school recital.
Like a family reunion at Joe's Pub.
And so now I have the pleasure of bringing to the stage my very favorite horny beer daddy cub Sailor.
Hey, so this is called Sailor's Journey. I'll breathe it out. So, all right. Thanks. All right. Better. Every year, like the holidays, The Sound of Music would come on. And at Maria's wedding, the nuns all sing How to Solve a Problem Like Maria. I could imagine myself as like a novice nun twirling in the mountains, yodeling. It became like this fascinating thing, like how do I solve the problem of me? Like all the tut-tuts, the deep parental sighs, teachers shaking their heads as they would give you your D. Everybody could see you take it back to your table. I'm in New York City, about 38. So I just finished an MFA in creative writing, and I sort of racked up a hefty bill. I, for some reason, gave up my job, and then I gave up my rent-stabilized one-bedroom apartment in Williamsburg. 4 years ago, I'd just broken up with some dude. Sort of like made a couple of steps to like show him that I really wanted to take it to the next place, and we then broke up and fell apart. So I was, you know, broke, I'm broken, I'm brokenhearted. I'm walking across the Williamsburg Bridge both ways in January. My physical body doctor at the time had seemed a little concerned. She suggested that I was having a nervous breakdown. I'm pretty pissed off about it. My mom had a series of breakdowns, and I was yanked away from her as a kid, and I sort of was like, no, I can't become my mom. I can't just be like this fragile little thing that breaks down. The thing about a breakdown is it allows you to like, time to stop. So even though it's spiraling, it's also slowing down. Did start to heal up a little bit. Things kind of melded. It's with like hesitant steps that I sort of dipped my toe into the hooker pool. Crossing that line felt a little bit like sort of just opening a rickety garden fence and stepping through, and like you break on through to the other side and you think, what's the worst thing I could do now? Once you get paid a couple of times, you're like, this is weird, this is not that big a deal. Reviews start pouring in. Reviews like, he's hairy, handsome, and bearded. Where did I go right? Sailor is a pleasure to be around. Sailor has an amazing ass, and he lets you know just how much he likes you to eat it. If I have a thesis, it's that hooking kind of saved my life. Because at the time, I was burnt, and I'd been in service forever. Waiting tables, bartending, building sets, retail, teaching. When you learn in service, you clock hours with your body. Sweat, wear and tear, your time, your freedom of mind. I really think that it would be great if everybody could go home and review their partner or whoever they're going to be with later. It's your wetness, your thrustability, your ability to take a licking and keep on ticking, your punctuality, your sound, your smell, your taste, your level of sluttiness versus your command of body function. Don't grade somebody on their apartment, their bank account, their mathematical abilities, their skills. Grade them on their kissability, on how nice they feel at night. I want to say I did forget 80% of what I was going to do up here, but but it's, it's this glamorous room and everything and all you people. But you guys came to see a bunch of hookers talk, not me. So anyway, I want to thank you very much. I was really glad to be a part of this. My cupcake hands. I winged the whole thing. I completely forgot everything.
Perfect. Did you look at your hands?
No, I showed them that my hands were covered because they were shaking so much. So I forgot all the reviews, and then in the middle I was like, I can tell you all the reviews really fast. I have no recollection of what I said at all.
How did the audience react?
I think they were a little confused by some of the stuff I was saying, because I was a little confused. I just didn't want to do anything that was moralizing. That's all. Because it's a lie.
Sailor, will you take a picture of us? Yes, yes. I love the contrast of like
iPhone and
professional
like
$70,000 worth of equipment.
3, 2, 1.
Whole bunch of like dusty notebooks. Maybe that speaks to some age on them. So this one says Busty the Clown on the cover. Not long after moving to New York, I was in like a sketch comedy troupe doing a lot of clowning and developed this character Busty Kitten as like both a clown and a burlesque performer. My background in the world of sex work is as a stripper. I don't know why that says that on the cover because there are no clown routines in that notebook. There are some like erotic stories in here.
Erotic clown stories?
My mom was a stripper for close to 20 years. Some of this starts to look like ramblings of a mad person. I never wanted to be like my mother. We didn't get along.
Ready for X? Yep.
When I talk about art as a healing thing, like that's really, I think it comes very much from that personal experience of finding my place in the world through this high school drama class. That was the one place that I fit in and I felt comfortable and I wanted to be. I was 19, going to community college, studying theater, not making a ton of money. My best friend at the time, she was like, I'm gonna lose 40 pounds and start stripping. That's what she did, like in a matter of months, lost 40 pounds and started stripping and was doing really, really well. Like that was really a big part of it, was like, oh, so I'm like working my ass off and coming home smelling like pancakes and sausage, and maybe I made like $80, and one of my best friends is talking about how much fun she's having and like making these new friends and like going out and coming home with like $400 or $500. Every single song was 2 minutes and you would get $15 per lap dance. I'm making $15 for 2 minutes. It was really exciting. And so there were days where I'd have like 10 dances or days where I'd have like 25. But just that thought of like 2 minutes, $15. I was partying all the time, meeting all these new girls, buying new dresses and getting all glammed up all the time just to go to work, and then after work going out and like still being glammed up and being able to like go to nice dinners. When I started dancing and I realized that there were women that were stripping and they were mothers and they were great mothers, that was mind-blowing. Or that there were women that were stripping and like their families knew all about it, because my mom always hid it from her parents and from everybody else in our family. What bothered me the most was that I was lying to my family. That was shitty.
Have you ever given anybody a, you know what I'm going to say, with that lipstick on?
No.
Why?
Lipstick blowjobs? I think the glitter would be great.
Like, why? And then he was like, it's so slutty.
But the glitter, I think, would just like never come off. Like,
Well, glitter does never come off.
Yeah,
It's like, that's why they say it's like herpes.
Yeah, the herpes
It sticks
of
around forever.
burlesque,
Yeah.
Because the rest of society isn't acknowledging this as just a normal job, the like emotional process that you go through, that's what makes the experience so impactful and so monumental. It's that it happens in resistance, these social pressures that we're saying this isn't okay and this isn't valid. I made a mark.
So, I had a fear. Sometimes I would have nightmares about this fear, and sometimes I would cry about this fear. I was afraid I would one day end up exactly like my mother. Loud, moody, messy, the kind of person who stops strangers walking their dogs in the middle of the street to squeal, "Oh my God, he's so cute, can I pet him?" I even denied physical similarities. One time she asked me, "Don't you think it's funny how our eyes are exactly the same color?" No, not at all. So at 19, I decided it was time to get over it. And I'm a big believer that in order to overcome a fear, you have to face it. If you're afraid of heights, go skydiving. If you're afraid of spiders, get a pet tarantula. But what do you do if your fear is more Freud than Hitchcock? I thought about it, and this is what I came up with. I would go into the family business. Given I'd never really considered what my mom did to make money a legit business. It was a necessity. It was a joke. It was an embarrassing piece of gossip when it got around school. My mom was a stripper. And I wanted to do something that I considered a quintessential part of her identity, to prove I could still be me. So at 19, I became a stripper too. It didn't hurt that my best friend had just started dancing at this club called The Body Shop and was making a lot of money. But whatever the reasons, the first step was finding the perfect outfit. I couldn't help thinking about when I was young, and I would go with my mom to pick out her outfits. We would visit Teresa, a former stripper turned seamstress who custom made these elaborate creations for my mom and all of her friends. We'd sit in her sewing room and she would coo over me while my mom sifted through neatly folded stacks of fabrics, lime green, magenta, neon pink, aquamarine. Do you want one piece or two? Oh, I like when it has those crisscrossing straps in the back. Did you hear about Stacy? She married Ron the bouncer. They had to catch up on all the local strip club news before we could leave. And then I would wait until the day we could go back and I could reach into that giant Ziploc bag and pull out this beauty. Each sequin hand sewn with a tiny bead at the center. When my mom wasn't home, I would sneak into her dance bag and try it on, patting the top and tying all the strings as tight as I could. My friend parked her car at one of those many dancewear shops on the boulevard. This one stood out because it was painted purple. The dancewear look had changed a lot from what I remembered in those childhood trips to Teresa's. My friend handed me a pair of white spandex boy shorts and a white spandex triangle top. There wasn't one single sequin. The only embellishment was a red kiss mark right on the ass cheek. Audition day came. I thought I might burst into tears on first sight, thinking about my mom and everything she had done to take care of me. But I knew I had to push through that because I had this goal. I was gonna do this thing and do it right. Make my money, get out, not feel bad about it. I wouldn't do it the way my mom had done it. I walked in, found my friend, we took a seat and watched the stage. I did not have the slightest urge to cry. It was exciting. I was turned on. There were voices of women everywhere. Hey, Shay, who's your friend? Renee, your song's on. Oh, girl, did I tell you about? I changed in the bathroom, one last makeup check, and flung open the door, took a step, wobbled in my 8-inch heels, and ate shit. Right out in front of everybody. I looked up and found my friend wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. I made my way to the stage and danced with complete exhilaration. The song? Yo, honey, let's do it, ride it, my pony. Classic Genuine. That fall was exactly what I needed to realize I could no more determine the outcome of this endeavor than I could change the color of my eyes. My mom and I get along really well now. I'm not afraid of being like her anymore. She's human. She still doesn't know about me stripping. But when I tell her, I want to tell her this, that my understanding of sex work came from the fact that it's part of everything that nourished me. From the peanut butter and honey sandwich in my lunchbox, to the laughter of loved ones on a Sunday afternoon, and my mother's arms as she carried me down the babysitter's stairs at 3 a.m. Thank you. Part of my story that came out that Daisha hadn't even heard this part is that at the end I revealed to the audience that I actually haven't told my mom that I was ever a stripper, or that I'm in this documentary, or that I identify as a former sex worker, or any of that. So I did tell my mom, finally. I went home for Christmas and went through like the whole week and didn't find the right chance to do it. And finally, like, as we were driving to the airport, it's like a 20-minute ride, and as soon as we get in, I like turn down the radio and I'm like, okay, I have this thing I need to tell you, and I'm pretty nervous about it, and I tell her, and she's just like, so?
We used to have a black storefront, but it wasn't gaudy enough, so our executive director picked this lovely blue color. This is like a place for low-income folks and drug users and folks of color who are of this neighborhood, standing out like a sore thumb in lovely gentrified Park Slope. We're happy we have a long lease. Come on in.
Yeah, went all out with the stuffing, man. Not bad, not bad. I never did your turkey's boys.
I relocated from Detroit, where I was a full-time sex worker. The economy is really hard in Detroit. I knew that I would have a really hard time transitioning out of the industry as long as I stayed in Detroit. There's just like a lot more opportunities here, and I thought that I could continue doing sex work as long as I was looking for a job. Well, it's really, really hard to do sex work in New York City. The most sex workers in the world are like here. My one job was to get the cranberry sauce. I have to be able to slice it.
You gotta be able to slice it into circles.
Not the loose stuff.
Exactly. Jumbie cram sauce.
I work on the Compassionate Care Act, so I'm a community organizer working to, build power amongst disabled and seriously ill and families and communities that want to see safe and legal access to medical marijuana. When I got into sex work, I had just been fired from 2 community organizing jobs back to back. I was mostly working amongst white folks. A lot of them were middle to upper middle class. Most of them did not come from working class backgrounds. They were like academics. People were expected to work 60 to 80 hours a week, and if you worked less, then you weren't about the movement. The conditions that we were organizing to achieve in the workplaces of my members were far better than the conditions that I was working under myself. You just have like this existential crisis. What am I working for? I burnt out on community organizing in some serious kind of way, and I was 27. There was a point where it was like November 1st, and I did not have rent. I got with an agency and I was like, you know, I need to make rent money, like now. And that's when I turned my first 6 tricks. I turned 6 tricks, I think in like 2 days or something. Because you're now a sex worker, I mean, like, you have to lie a lot to different people in your life. A lot of times you have to lie to people who are extremely close to you. Your sense of self really gets fucked up, and when people treat you super, super different. So if you're not lying to them about the fact that you're a sex worker, they're trying to figure out what the fuck it is that you do. Or they've figured it out, or you've told them, then they inevitably treat you differently. It was never my intention or like a planned thing that I would like come out as a sex worker. If you asked me if I was out about being a sex worker, I would say no unequivocally. Now I would still say no, but like not unequivocally. Outness is directly related to a marginalized identity. Because outness doesn't exist when the identity is not marginalized. That's the parallel. That's why people who are married in heterosexual relationships don't come out. There's not any required secrecy. You have this ceremony in front of this religious person sometimes, and sometimes a legal person, or like a captain of a ship. Then there's some papers exchanged. In contrast to that whole arrangement, prostitution to me seems a lot more straightforward. You have this label and it says you're married, and that makes sense to everyone. I have a label too, and it was that I was a prostitute. And I just never really conceived of it as something that I would be out about or not out about. If a cop asked me if I'm a prostitute or ever engaged in prostitution, do you think I'm gonna be out? No, I'm not. I'm not out to Customs and Borders and Immigration. I'm not out in a job interview. I'm not out to my parents. Like, I'm not trying to have a conversation with mom and pa about like what goes on in my sex life, period.
Oh my God. Just come back a little bit and watch me work this. I love this.
I love that you're doing this here right now. I just really feel that everyone should have the choice to go into sex work just like any other job to see if it's a good fit for them. For a lot of people, it's a great way to make money, and for women-identified people, for trans folks, for gay folks, it's been a way where we're able to survive. I have the utmost respect for people who work in restaurants. I'm like, I just want to sell pussy. Like, that I can do. I miss sex work. I could see myself doing it again.
I had a hooker mentor of mine once tell me that successful prostitutes identify their niche and then market exactly to that audience. And I already knew what my niche was. I called myself the South Asian sensation, Saffron Singh. And once my ads were up, I started attracting white guys and brown guys in about equal numbers. All of them looking for their own personal Aishwarya Rai, a Bollywood fantasy girl. My hooker mentor then told me that I could get away with doubling my rates. She even encouraged me to do it. She told me I was pricing myself out of my ideal clientele. Rich guys with lots of disposable income and willing to pay for a legit upscale experience, which basically meant that they would pay a whole lot more for exactly the same shit I was already doing. So I had this one client, Rav, who was grandfathered in from my previous pay structure. He absolutely was shocked at the raise that I gave myself, and he flat out refused to see me on a weekly basis as he had been doing. He would see me way less. He would consequently pay me way less, and he would make up for it by complaining way, way more. And Rav was especially endearing to me because he wasn't a working class Joe like most of my Indian clients. He was actually a neurosurgeon. Every single time that I saw him, he would emphasize that he was a family man, that he had a daughter about my age, and by my age, he meant Saffron's age, which was 5 to 7 years younger, but you get the point. He had this daughter, Monica. She was a college student, and he had tuition bills to pay. He acted like a few extra bills for my donation was like stealing food right out of Monica's poor little mouth. He would always make sure to book me for the minimum amount of time that he could possibly pay me for, 60 minutes. And whenever I would gently encourage him that we may want to spend more time together, he would always insist that he was far too busy, which I would have believed. Rav was a neurosurgeon, and when we were together in session, his beeper was constantly buzzing throughout the entire time. But there was one crack in Rav's story, and it was this. Rav could never, ever finish on time. And when it came time to extend the session, his hesitation was never about the time constraints. It was always the money. I would always suggest that we just call it a day. I mean, by that point, Rav wasn't really contributing a whole hell of a lot to my income, and I just wanted to be done with it. But Rav was all 200% in it, all, I need you, Saffron, you know I can't leave you now. So I tried to be firm with him without sacrificing too much of the sexy. It would be something like, oh, baby, yes, if you need me, then you'll pay. I remember that last time, Rav reached across me to his wallet on the night table. He grumbled close to my ear, I have a daughter, I have a family, as he extracted another crisp 100 and left it for me. And then he was right back in it, all thrusting and moaning, and you're so pretty, Saffron. I love you, you're like my family. I work too much. I'm so busy, you're so pretty. And I definitely want it to be done. So I searched back into this mysterious Trictionary of hooker tricks. Every hooker has one. Of how I could possibly close this session out. Oh, Daddy, yes, fuck me more! Oh, my baby Monica, yes, I love fucking you! Yep. So the happy hooker side of me knows that Rav is looking to me at this moment to provide some modicum of comfort in this very awkward situation, which I happily would have provided if he hadn't woefully underpaid me. So instead, I make a beeline for the bathroom in a signal for Rav to get dressed and get the fuck out. But by the time I'm out, he's fully dressed and unfortunately still there. I usher him out the door with some dismissive comments about how I'll see him again soon, and I don't wait for the door to completely shut before I let a shudder rack my body, just kind of shake it out. It was my ritual with most of my clients because the reality was I didn't feel a whole lot more distasteful about Rav than I did about the vast majority of my clients. I mean, it is kind of a cosmic joke, isn't it? That we're all raised in this really misogynistic society that teaches us to idolize youth and beauty. And then a guy like Rav has this gorgeous little girl, and she grows up to be this exotic, beautiful, young college co-ed, and he kind of wants to fuck her. And he's not the only one. There's a lot of things that you learn as a hooker that you can only valiantly struggle to unknow. And I knew this. A lot of guys want to fuck their daughters. Thank you. Or they want to fuck somebody else's daughter, or they want to fuck somebody who's young enough that they could imagine it's their daughter. Some of them go on the internet, some of them make passes at their students, some of them, in extreme circumstances, abuse their family members. Some of them are Woody Allen. Rav, on the other hand, paid me not enough money to pretend I was his daughter and incest fantasy fuck me without asking. Did I think for a moment in that hotel room whether or not me refusing to see Rav ever again would turn him into some kind of dirty old man because he wouldn't find an outlet for his taboo desire? that he would turn to start making passes at his daughter's friends, or worse, his actual daughter? Of course I thought it. Did I actually care? Not really. I mean, shit, that's not how I made my money. It was not literally or figuratively any of my business to pass down moral judgment on my clients. I was trying to survive. If there was any lesson that I was trying to teach Rav by never ever seeing him again, no matter how many times he called me or emailed me, texted me, or tried to help me down through my agency, it was this. If you're gonna hire a hooker, pretend it's your daughter, and then incest fantasy fuck her, you better pay daddy's little girl exactly what she deserves.
That we came together and took over a stage to tell our own stories from our own perspectives. The power of our experiences is undeniable.
It's not just all about our struggles and our hardship, but like this is really celebrating the community and our achievements.
I hope they remember that we're people, that we deserve the same rights they do.
If my legacy is leaving a little bit of something that will help to humanize strippers, women of color, women in the sex industry, and then I feel pretty good about the legacy that I'm leaving.
I have to find something to do when I can't hawk this carcass. There's no next level of hooking. Where am I gonna go from here? The best hooker in town?
I get to have this heat map of desire across the 5 boroughs and the suburbs.
I feel like I've been making peace with this decision to tell people about sex work for the past 10 years of my life, and I still probably don't know how I feel about it.
We were cold sluts from the time we were 5, and teased so fucking bad that we thought we would die. We wore the golden tie jeans who always walked alone and rode our bikes late at night to avoid going home. We numbed ourselves out on peppermint schnapps and supersized Sundays with chocolate sauce. We stole cheap locks from the hardware store and put them up with burners on bedroom doors.
There's all kinds of sex worker stories that we're never going to hear about. The people who lived them just chose to move on and not share it with the wider world. For those of us that do opt to share it, we're sort of like, we're a little bit beholden to all those untold stories also.
In the movie they show us in each other.